ado, I'm just going to introduce our guest with a little bit of information. So Morgan Given is a Chicago-based family law attorney. She has been practicing for well over a decade, and she's experienced from high net worth cases to custody cases, high conflict, you name it. She can really help you through your divorce process. And she has a great presence on social media. She really offers meaningful information that even if you're not in the state of Illinois, you're going to find from the information she's sharing. So without further ado, welcome, Morgan. I'm so happy to have you here.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here too. And you're one of the first accounts I followed when I was starting my social media. And so it's just so great to join you. And I'm really excited to talk about some of these tips because the big thing that I do on my channel is try to give like specific tips, not just sort of like vague educational stuff, but like really usable things that you can incorporate, whether that's language or a specific actionable item. And I think it's like there's so much information that I've seen that works over all of these cases that can be used to help people save a lot of money, get better results, just like make the divorce process so much better.
That's exactly right. You can hear me, yeah, because I switched mics. Okay. And educating yourself early. There are so many great and reputable divorce professionals out here on social media. So if you're not familiar with Morgan, please give her a follow. She's at Tara-Given. And if you're not familiar with me, I'm at the.divorce.plan. Just start the process of educating yourself. And with that, let's jump into some things that you should really be, your information you're going to want to know. So my first question is, what's the biggest financial mistake you've seen clients making before filing for a divorce?
I think the biggest one is honestly just waiting too long. I have so many clients who call me and they are, like 15 years, 20 years in, and maybe their spouse stopped working at some point or just like wasn't pulling their weight financially. And I really can only tell them, like, I wish I had a time machine. I wish I could put you back at the beginning of this and have you leave earlier. Because if they are incurring debt or if you are saving and they are not, that marital estate is going to have to be divided in some way. So it's better to just pull the plug once you see these problems occurring and you want to get out. And I think that's a big one, that people really need to consider that like years down the road, if they have all this debt, you might get stuck with it. And your retirement accounts you work so hard for might get divided.
I think that's true. And I also understand the position that potential client, because I get the same kind of clients who especially if you have children, there's a good chunk of time in your life where you're just in survival mode.
Right.
You feel frozen and paralyzed, and even during those times, overwhelmed. Just start the legwork. I actually, people are surprised. I work with clients at various stages of early preparation. I work with people who aren't sure whether or not they want a divorce. So why? People are like, why do you do that? How come they use you? Because no matter what, if you reconcile, you have all your financial information, you have all of the important documents and statement of your life, and you understand your goals and priorities. So it serves you no matter what happens. But just even taking a little action, and people feel shut down, right? If you're in that mode. But I agree with you. We get one go, so make the most of it.
Yeah, it's empowering to like sit down and make a plan. Even if you don't decide you're going to do it right then, I think it gives you just so much sense of security that you know what you have, regardless of what path you take.
Knowledge is power across the board. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to do this. Pardon me, technical. Not everything that you get on TikTok shop works. Okay, let's see here. Number 2. This is a big one. Can text messages and social media posts really hurt a divorce case?
Oh, yeah. I have seen it happen. I mean, here's the thing. Perception is reality in a divorce. And so the optics of kind of like the story that you are portraying to the court matters a lot. And the judge, if you get to that level, like the judge is not going to read 1,000 text messages. So if you sent 1,000 text messages and one of them was nasty and all the others were like perfectly kind, Your ex is going to use the one bad one. And even if your ex was like 90% of the problem in how you communicate and they're always being terrible to you, the court is like honestly probably going to see this as like, ah, they both can't get along. They're both problems here. So it really matters. Um, you have to think about everything you write being seen by a judge one day. And I've used text messages and social media posts against the other party in litigation.
Mhm.
I've had people, like I did one where maintenance was terminated because the recipient of maintenance was now in a new relationship. She claimed that she had no connection to the new relationship's family and never met his kids. But we had a post where she had been at Thanksgiving with the whole family, you know, all the stepkids together, and she titled it The New Brady Bunch. And that was like pretty powerful in the deposition. But on the flip side, like text messages where parties say, I don't care about, you know, our son's autism. I don't believe in autism. He never needs to go to a doctor. We've used that to show that, you know, the other parent needed medical decision making. So you're making a record, you know, which can be used against you later. And one little tidbit too, if you are, you know, heading towards litigation, and I hope you're not, you need to make sure that you've locked in that that text message can be introduced at court. So kind of a sneaky way you can do this without having to pay for a whole deposition is use a request to admit and then send the other party a list. Okay, this message, this message, this message, attach it as an exhibit. Say, you sent this, admit or deny. And they're going to have to admit it, you know, and then you don't have to go through this whole kind of extensive thing at trial where you're, you know, they're arguing, well, that wasn't me, that wasn't my phone. Just a little piece of advice.
Morgan, you just saved somebody thousands of dollars, literally.
Truly, I mean, like you could people do whole depositions
Yeah.
and spend $2,000 just to introduce those text messages. Yeah. Just do a request to admit.
Oh my gosh, thank you. That is everything. Like my whole thing is helping you save time and money. And I love what you said about like, if you can avoid litigation, please do it. Mediation is a much more cost-effective option. And I think there's this idea that if people aren't getting along perfectly, it's not going to be an option. It really is. You're not going to be kind of guiding the divorce process. Other people are going to do that. A third party, the divorce mediator, is going to do it. So it takes the heat off of you, and it tends to be a third of the cost of what a litigation.
I would say a tenth of the cost. Honestly, it's it's
that.
amazing how much more litigation costs in mediation. You're so right. Like you don't need to get along perfectly to do it. You really don't.
Yeah.
You just need to be smart. You need to both want to save some money. Is the big thing.
And especially if you have kids, you have to love your kid more than you're upset about your divorce.
Yeah.
And I think people also, I work with clients about this, like even in the most amicable of splits, people are really surprised at the emotions that bubble up. When you're working with clients, I'm working with people when you start talking about finances, when you start talking about childcare, when you start talking about retirement, it brings up a lot of feelings. And I'm always working with people and saying, please do not, in the moment, acknowledge you're having a feeling. Do not open your mouth. You don't want to make big decisions based on feelings. You want to make them based on fact. Okay. So my next question was actually a big one on TikTok. What's your number one tip for protecting retirement accounts during divorce that most people don't know about?
Yeah. Okay. I've got two. I think one thing that people miss all the time, like most people know, if you have money in your retirement account before you got married, that typically stays yours. So, say you had 20,000 in your account before you got married. But that $20,000 has grown and changed since you got married. So don't ignore that that has probably increased in value as like stocks have increased. So you need to include the market gains on what you had premaritally. This is something that I see lawyers ignore all the time, and it's like can cost their clients like $50,000. So that's one. And two is understand that your retirement account, if it's a 401k or some other tax deferred account, it's not the same as cash because you're going to have to pay taxes on it. You have a 401k that's awarded to you and it's $100,000. You will pay federal taxes and you can't withdraw from it until you are reaching retirement age. So that's really more like getting $75,000 as opposed to $100,000 in cash. So if you're trading assets, you need to think about the tax implications.
That is so true. Thank you. I mean, my mind is blown about including the equity you've built in that. Let's say you had 401k or a SEP before marriage that had 20k in it. You need to include all of the equity you built in that. I mean, duh. Fantastic. Fantastic. Okay. These are good answers, Morgan. Hold on. Okay. So the next question is, how soon should you start documenting childcare expenses or childcare issues for custody arrangements?
Yeah, so if you're seeking reimbursement, I mean, certainly in my state, and I think this is the case a lot of places, you need a court order to be able to enforce it and get it in most situations. So if you don't have a court order, you probably need to get one unless they're voluntarily paying, or at least file the motion, the request seeking those expenses. Both parties should be maintaining the status quo. So if they were contributing to this before, they should continue. But if they weren't contributing or they stop, you first go to their lawyer. You don't run to court and see if you can resolve it. But if that doesn't get fixed quickly, get your motion on file so that you can ask for retroactive, which is past expenses. And then you start documenting. You make sure that, once you have this obligation in an order, you have it documented so that you can enforce it.
Fantastic. Documentation is everything. We did get a question dropped in. I'm not sure if you'll be able to answer it or not, but I want to honor it. This person says, I've lived my entire life in New York, but moved out 6 months ago after separating. Should I file for my divorce in New Jersey? I'm assuming that's where this person is now, or New York.
Most of the time you file where you reside now. In my state, you moved to Illinois and you could file if you've been here for 3 months.
Oh, okay.
And even if you haven't been here for 3 months, if you have lived here for 3 months by the time the divorce is entered, you can file here. So every state has different rules for establishing the residency. But a lot of people tell me oh, I got married in Texas. Do I have to get divorced in Texas? No. Your divorce occurs, where you are. But you need to be careful because if your spouse lives somewhere else, they can file in their state. And it's really first to the courthouse wins most of the time. So you want to consider, getting your case filed quickly if you're in 2 different states, or at least talk to an attorney about the strategy.
I mean, this is such an important subject to touch on, especially because, the laws vary state by state, whether it's community property, fault, no fault. So,
oh my gosh.
Again.
And with new changes, I mean, there's a lot of states who are talking about getting rid of no fault, which is frankly horrifying to me as a divorce lawyer. So you really think carefully, if people are in different states.
It's really interesting, and it is the subject of no fault divorce is very, I don't know why, but very polarizing. I've had a lot of comments from men on social media when I post, specifically on a lot on Facebook, who have issue with no fault divorce. And there's this predominant, and this is a small segment of the population, this doesn't represent everybody, but there's this feeling of you signed a contract, you have to stay married. And what I think people fail to remember is a divorce contract is between 2 people in the state that they live in. Okay. If you had a business and you had a partnership agreement, you wouldn't then say, well, you have to prove why we're going to dissolve this company. You know what I mean? This is a legal contract that you're dissolving, as opposed to, just because you got married to somebody doesn't, and things change, that person or you don't need to be in that situation. People lose jobs, people get sick, and sometimes relationships end. This is all normal. Why do you want to be married to somebody who doesn't want to be married to you anymore, by the way?
I think it's a control issue, honestly, and people want to have the moral victory. There are people who are hurt. Of course, it's painful to be the one who experiences being cheated on. This is horrible. But focusing on that in the divorce, the court, even in fault states, you're not getting the moral victory. you're just wasting more money. You're giving more money to your lawyers
Yes.
out of anger.
That is the key, which is why, like, I've shared this with you. It's obvious all over my social media. And part of my coaching philosophy is there's, as I said, an emotional side and there's a business side, and you really need to address both and separate them.
Yeah.
Because, I understand hurt feelings. I understand feeling your ego is bruised or your self-esteem is really hurt. But, just trying to stick it to somebody else and drag out the legal process is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. It's not going to happen. You're the one who's drinking poison. So I hope that resonates for somebody and like helps them kind of refocus. Like, living well is your best revenge. Let me say it.
Mm-hmm.
Living well is your best revenge. So focus on you. Focus on what's next, not what is in the past. And sometimes you're never going to get the answers you're looking for. And it don't matter because they're not about you. They're about the other person. Okay. So we just got dropped in, which I think is an important question. How much should I save up for a divorce? This is a great question.
Yeah, it is a great question. I think in advance of your divorce, you should ideally have some type of separate account so that you have funds in it in the event things go south. I mean, you need to save up essentially enough for a retainer,
Yeah.
a decent retainer. In your case, for most attorneys, it's going to be in the ballpark of, say, $5,000. You can find a good lawyer. Because that's what you need to like kind of get it open, even if that's all you have, because your attorney can file a motion to get access to funds, to freeze accounts so people stop transferring money out of funds to get you attorney's fees. But you need to have that to get the lawyer, and then obviously you need enough to be able to support yourself for that month or two as like things are getting progressed through the court system if you're trying to get funds quickly. I mean, the more the better, but most people don't have, the really critical thing is, like a couple months of living expenses, $5,000 for a divorce attorney.
I think that's so wise. The other thing I talk to clients about, if you're in a position where, and again, mediation, if you can, please. But if you're in the position and you can, I always, when I'm working with clients and get prepared to send them to you, Morgan, so that they have all the administrative stuff that you need to start working. And then you're not like, I need this, I need that. It's like you can get to work. If you're I always send them off to have consultations with divorce attorneys first. And why? Because you don't know what you don't know, especially if you go through mediation. It's a neutral third party. That person works for divorce. They don't work for you. They don't work for your spouse. They're not going to be bringing up things that you should be thinking about personally because they're not looking out for your best interest. But if you have the funds to be able to take a consultation with a divorce attorney in that jurisdiction, and next step, to get information when you're all prepared, asking your questions, and then retain them just on your behalf to have in your back pocket. Please do it. And people are going to say, oh my gosh, but that's $5,000. Here's the headline. You're probably not going to use it. So you're going to get that money back, but it's an insurance program. So you can send, here are the notes that I got from the mediator, or you go, here's the plan. This is what we want. And then they help you negotiate how to ask things, what to look for. But they also will go through meeting notes and the judgment drafts and, with a fine tooth comb, dotting all the I's and crossing all the T's, but with your best interest in mind.
Totally.
And I game changer, things put into judgments because of that. Go ahead, Morgan.
No, I mean, I feel so strongly about that because I have seen mediation agreements that are like so bare bones that, okay, fine, you got like the real basics, but like so much stuff is left out. And this is something I help my clients with as an attorney, but also if I take clients from across the nation now to review their parenting judgments, to go over the specific language. There are so many important details that we want to make sure are addressed because, ultimately, if you forget some of this stuff, you might go back to court. You're going to have conflict. You're going to have just more stress, and you're going to have such a smoother lifestyle for your kids, for you, if you deal with this now. Yeah. And yes, you're absolutely right that it does not cost as much money as people think to have that attorney's review, in the mediation process. It is so different. The people are thinking you're paying the like big bucks to go to trial.
Yeah.
No, you're paying between, $1,500 and $5,000 realistically, and usually on the lower end, if the attorney is efficient, as they should be.
Yeah, which is so true. And, you know, again, this goes back to one of the most triggering aspects of the divorce process is the money side of it. And so to hear those numbers, people can be like, oh my God, on top of, yes, a little bit more, stretch yourself a tiny bit more because you're investing in your future.
Oh my gosh, you are investing in peace of mind, in holidays not being horrible, in not having to pay a future lawyer $20,000 to iron out massive like problems with the summer, and like, can you go to Europe? Can you have Christmas? What happens when someone is, I mean, there's so many details that a good divorce attorney or coach has seen like 1,000 times. Like, all these possible pitfalls, and we have all kinds of tools to avoid them, address them now. So yeah, spend $2,000 now so you're not spending 20,000 or God knows how much more later. And just the stress factor, that, I mean, to me, it's priceless.
Yeah.
You will have you want the rules of the game. You want it to be, you know what, we don't agree about Thanksgiving this year. Well, let's consult our extremely specific document. Okay, there it is. And then you're done.
It is, especially whether or not you're even in a high conflict situation, it helps because you're co-parenting, especially if it's a parenting plan. And if you have young kids, you really have to look with an eye with your attorney of, okay, my kid is, let's say, 7 years old now. You need to think between 7 and 18. Put as much possible. There's a colleague of mine on this app as well as others, the boss, who I've spoken to many, many times. She's a parenting plan expert, a coach. Doing this now, I always like to say it's like you don't get a do-over in divorce.
Right.
You don't. You just have to open it all back up, and it's like opening a wound again, financially and emotionally, because it's draining. Anything to do. I'm sorry. Thank God that you're representing me, Morgan. Or that's how a client should feel, because it's exhausting.
Yeah.
The whole process.
It is. It gives me chills, honestly, like just thinking about I've seen my clients who've gone through the trauma of the divorce.
Yeah.
Even on the best of circumstances, it's not easy. And then having to like go through round 2, 3, or 4, it's horrible.
Yeah.
And I will, from the very beginning, give them advice designed to prevent that. I mean, it is, and you can do it.
Mm-hmm.
You absolutely can do it. It feels overwhelming. It feels like you said, like, oh my gosh, spend another $1,000 or $2,000. I'm already like, it's worth it. It's worth it. And I tell this to my friends getting divorced, to my family, like, this is the way to do it.
Yeah.
You want to do it ideally, through very strategic, intensive, prepared mediation. And the mediation also, like the coaching that a good lawyer or divorce coach will give you, is to how to get your spouse to like buy into this process.
Mm-hmm.
Because if they feel like they're part of the solution, and they might think like, oh, they came up with an idea, even if you led them to it a little bit,
yes,
they are going to be so much more likely to stick to it, to agree to it, and to actually follow it. I mean, that's a huge, huge value.
It's a huge value, and that's a very common dynamic. I work with a lot of clients who, are with somebody who can be quite emotional and reactive to things. So again, the preparation, the educating yourself, creating, your divorce team, and really being an active participant in that team by being your best advocate, because you've done the preparation, so that you're strategic, so you save money, so that everybody feels kind of taken care of. I'll even have people, I'll say, okay, great. Go get a list from an attorney when you do these consultations of 3 different mediators, and share them with your soon-to-be ex and say, I got some names. Let's set up some meetings together. And then even put who did you like most?
Yeah, let them choose.
Yeah.
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 Mm-hmm.
And just anticipate. And I also like to tell clients, whatever your role, your dynamic has been during your marriage will be your role and your dynamic during divorce. So don't think all of a sudden, because you've been making the plans and you've been keeping the schedules together and you've been taking care of the household, that all of a sudden, like, the divorce process is just going to kind of go without you. Are going to be leading that process too, like everything else in your life. And for people who are just joining us, who might be just thinking about a separation or divorce at the beginning stages of their journey, I've got a free guide, 24 questions to ask a divorce attorney or a mediator. It's in the, in my bio, in that thing that looks like a paperclip link. Feel free to go in there and just download it. It's a great jumping off point. Again, make the most of your time when you're booking these consultations with people. So you're going in a little bit more prepared. And it's a good jumping off point to think about what you should be asking, but also gets you organized. So you have all your notes on that person in one place. We have something else that was dropped in, but I want to get to a question. By the way, thank you so much for this time. We've blown by our 20 minutes. Do you have another minute or two, Morgan?
Oh my gosh, I honestly could talk about this stuff forever. I truly am very passionate about it, and I'm so glad that you're out there doing this work too. And those questions that you have are so valuable. I've read them, and it's such a great test for people. Really, I mean, if the attorneys you're consulting with take the time to answer these questions and answer them thoughtfully, you're doing yourself such a service. The biggest factor for how long your divorce will take or how much your money you're going to spend, I think, is honestly who are the attorneys.
Yes,
And
and making that good choice. And it's
mhm,
kind of, I have on my blog, what to expect when you're meeting with divorce attorneys. And remember, you're sniffing them out as much as they're sniffing you out. So you
mhm.
really, if you have children, I'm going to make this comparison. It's like when you had to pick a pediatrician and you're like, who can I be the most neurotic with? Anyway, okay, so I'm going to jump to the next question. This is kind of like I'm setting you up a little bit.
Okay.
What documents should you gather before filing?
Well, you should definitely work with Alex to have her tell you exactly what to gather. Truthfully, a huge investment. You will save so much money. I understand Alex's pricing, and oh my gosh, the amount you would pay your lawyer to do this work with you, it's like 4 or 5 times, less to work with Alex. But okay, basically you need to gather a list of your assets and your debts. And eventually you're probably going to have to exchange statements, but I would start with honestly just making a list. And the best way to do this, go to your state's website, like search financial affidavit Illinois, and you're going to find like the court mandated form. It walks you right through it. Just fill that
Yeah.
out. The other big one people don't do is get your premarital statements. Like that 401k, if you had 40,000 in it before you got married, it sometimes takes a fair amount of calling Fidelity and waiting and like poking around to get those statements. So gather those now too.
Yes. Yes, that is so important. And for anybody who's like, oh my gosh, I want a list, look, comb through my social media. Yes, this is what I do. I work with people and do this, and I have digital tools you can download, work, whatever. But I also talk about it. Like, just watch my content, go read the blog. It walks you through exactly what to. I just want you to be active. I want you to do it. I've been through this. Helped a lot of people through. Just do something. No matter what your budget, I have something for you on my website. Okay. How can you protect your finances without breaking the bank during divorce? We
Well, I mean, we've talked a
touched
lot about, yeah, I mean, mediation is
on,
the biggest one, honestly, and making decisions that are based in, yeah, so really being cognizant of what are your motives here, what's your bigger picture goal, and hire someone who's going to keep you focused on the bigger picture as opposed to like, I'm so angry that this happened last week.
yeah.
You know, that is huge.
I think that's right. And that's one of the things I would say too, which is, really separating the emotional side from the business side of it. Don't treat your attorney or your mediator like a therapist, because they're going to bill you like an attorney
Yeah,
or so
yeah.
deal with things in the appropriate manner. I am going to get to this comment that was dropped, and we will wrap up after this one because I've taken so much of your time, Morgan. Thank you. I'm not sure. I'm going to do my best with this. How to navigate a divorce with a high conflict ex with a new, I think, significant other who is overstepping. Agreements
Yeah.
are being violated. It feels like a 2-against-1 situation. I've been educating myself. Any tips?
Yeah, it's very tough. This new significant other is for good or for bad, probably going to be in the children's lives. I mean, courts they they don't often step in unless there is an egregious, you know, incident that that would warrant someone being barred from being spending time with the kids. However, if that significant other is inserting themselves into the communication with you and your co-parent, that is really not acceptable, and courts won't tolerate that.
Mhm.
One suggestion I would have is to keep the communication between you and your co-parent via writing, like use one of those co-parenting apps and do not allow, that significant other to be part of that. All the scheduling, all the stuff about kids' activities, that's a parent conversation, not something for the significant other to be involved in. And there's a lot of, I think, very inspirational videos out there from people who've been through this, which I would look at to kind of think about, if you have a new person in your kids' lives who wants to be there and wants to be connected to them, try to find the silver lining in that. I know that's easier said than done, but watch some of these videos because it was like very persuasive to me, and I can imagine it being kind of a reassuring source of support.
I think that is really great information for people. Also, I think Leah Marie and has a Facebook group and has a monthly subscription program for moms exact situation. So go check her out. I've got contact with her page. Morgan, thank you so much. I mean, honestly, I just saved all these people hundreds of dollars. I stole your time, Morgan. Thank you so
No, I love it. And I'm just one more tip because this occurred to me for the financial protecting yourself. Run a credit report. It's free. Run a credit report for yourself, even for your kids, and consider freezing your credit if there's an issue. If you think that your spouse is incurring debt in your name, this is something you can do. It's free.
Yep.
So easy. There's a lot of easy tricks, and I post a lot about these, and I know you do too. So look for these hacks and then take notes from what you see on TikTok and Instagram. There's a lot of legitimately useful, actionable advice that you can implement for free.
There are some really great resources out there. Again, I'm Alex Beattie, a divorce prep coach, the divorce planner across all social platforms, and the divorceplanner.net on the web. My guest today has been Morgan Given. She is a family law attorney based out of Chicago. You can follow her here on Instagram at Tara-Given. Thank you so much. I hope to have another conversation with you next season, which will be spring, because this is just the tip of the iceberg. Thank you so much.
Yes, thanks, Alex. Thanks for sharing all this with your followers. This has been
Absolutely.
great.
And thanks to everybody who joined us. Be well.